Ed Marsh here with Chris Dunn, a trade show display or booth. I'm sure we're going to hear more, but a specialist, a go-to guy for everything in this area. And Chris has graciously agreed to spend a few minutes looking at this booth that his team helped to implement, a company, a Bavarian company called Metal that makes machining centers. We're here at IMTS, and obviously a lot of companies, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people trying to make an impression. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity for Chris to just share his expertise, give us a quick tour of the way he thinks about a booth and how to set it up. So we may shift the camera if he wants to. It may be a little bit jumpy. I apologize, but let's give us, as you look at this, Chris, 5 things or 7 things, key things that you think companies miss that they would benefit from learning about it.
All right, let's see if we can drop some knowledge here. Really, the first thing that we're looking at here is why are we at the show? This is a machining show. The product, these large, cutters, are the star, right? They're the star of the booth. So we bring those forward, put them on the aisle, and create an engagement opportunity at the aisle. As people passing by, you've usually got about 3 to 5 seconds in order to attract their attention, right? So in what we're looking at right now with the GS 1200, we're actually cutting a piece, we're milling it, and then there's a TV that's actually slaving what's going on in there. So
how much does that thing weigh?
That weighs 30 tons.
So just the logistics of planning when it's coming into the booth and how to get it here. You know, people think about getting the display itself up and having the right carpet and pad, but getting this thing in here required a lot of coordination from your team.
Absolutely, and I think this is not going to be the most elaborate exhibit that we've ever seen, but it's a literal heavy lift when it comes to working with all of the different vendors that are involved. You've got the rigging company that specializes in handling the heavy equipment, so you're trying to facilitate timing, and you're working around. Like, we're standing in an empty aisle right now. This entire aisle was full of crates and full of gear just a few days ago, so it's difficult to just kind of work around all this stuff, and you really have to have a coordinated effort, and you got to be able to pivot and be flexible, because nothing will ever work as you plan it to. That's the reality of the situation.
All right, so number 1 tip is make sure you understand why you're here, so that the booth layout and design takes that into account. In this case, it's here to show machines, and so the machines are front and center.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and the fact that they're actually milling, product here on site is an attraction.
Making chips, I think, is the term in the industry.
Making chips. Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. We've got a finished piece. You can't really see it over in the corner, but that's about 120 hours of actual milling time to create that we call it a blisk. It's a fan blade unit, and because it's literally would take longer than the show is long, we've already created that. It's about a 500-pound piece. It took some engineering to build the cabinet that would hold that and to get it into place. So every little thing is not always a little thing.
Right.
I also want to say, leave plenty of space for your people, right? At the end of the day, we're in a people business, right? We're building relationships, we're having conversations. We've got a fairly sizable space in the middle to kind of sit down and enjoy, a drink and some conversation with some people.
And this is a 30 by 60 booth?
This is a 50 by 60, so
50 by 60.
3,000 square foot.
Wow.
It's more than twice as big. It's actually about 3 times larger than the booth they had last year, and coincidentally, they went from 1 large machine to 3 large machines. So
really doubling down on this.
They did, and that's really been their philosophy. Is they've only been in the market for a couple of years. They know that they are the new kids on the block, and they need to kind of step up and really kind of put all their marketing, chips into the center of the table.
And you worked with them 2 years ago for their first IMTS as well?
We did, absolutely.
And obviously that went smoothly because they brought you back.
Yeah, it went very well. We work with a fair amount of German companies with my organization. They're, if we could paint with a broad brush, they are good people who want to do business with people who they trust.
And they very much believe in the value of trade shows. That's the primary marketing that many German companies do.
Absolutely.
So you're in a good sector to build relationships with German companies.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, this company came to us through another German company that we worked with, who we have been with many, many years, and they recommended us. So, I mean, word of mouth still the most powerful way to grow on our industry, as well.
And the last IMTS was late 2022. So. Yep. Really just coming out of the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
And they decided they were going to make their U.S. market entrance at that point, and had a booth, and now expanded it.
Yeah, I think, as we were talking to Mr. Ilg over there, he, lamented he wished they could have been in the market a little bit sooner, but I think they kind of hit that COVID bubble that no one really, obviously, anybody expected.
Right.
And that caused a ripple effect across the board.
All right, so open space to meet, to welcome prospects, welcome customers. How about, some companies really build a wall around the booth with a door that you have to squirt through, and this is much more open to let people come and go all around the booth. What do you recommend? Is there a best practice in that regard?
I think it can go both ways, and I think you can make an argument for kind of both. Ed, as you and I were walking in here, we walked by another booth that did have the defined perimeter, and they were really bringing people in just a few spots. So the advantage is to kind of creating a space that looks like that. And these weren't hard walls; these were kind of see-through spaces, but you could only go in areas. When we design the booth, we talk about traffic flow. We talk about kind of that customer journey and the story that we're trying to tell, in the space. So if you've got a journey or a path that goes through, and you want people to specifically start at point A and then go to B and C and D, you have to control that traffic pattern.
Right.
So there are advantages to kind of building a booth that works in that fashion. This guy right here is a double wall peninsula. So as we look at it, we can see that we have neighbors on the back sides of both of these walls.
Right.
And we've left the other two walls very purposefully open. Now, granted, the machines are sizable. They come forward, as we've talked about, but that leaves a lot of room for kind of entry points. So people kind of pick where they want to kind of come in. They're probably caught, there's a bunch of pieces that are already pre-milled, the really cool pieces that they've made. Those are attractive type of things that people can come in and kind of look at.
Right.
Obviously,
and presumably things that for people in this business would be meaningful. They represent a particular, a very sophisticated machining capability or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm blown away watching the videos of these machines work, and rotating, spinning the pieces and carving them from this solid block of steel. It's like mind-boggling how precise they can be, down to the the micron.
Right. All right. Another feature that you think companies maybe sometimes overlook that you've made sure was implemented here?
This is not anything new, but what attracts the eye is light, color, and motion. You need to have something that's moving. You need to have something that's at least got a little bit of colorful aspect to it. And you don't want to have a dark space.
Right.
A dark space looks like your store is not open, right? So it's well lit. We've got TVs across kind of the wall. They're all running kind of similar content, but they're showing, whether they're stills or they're videos. There's always kind of that movement, and that's the kind of thing that catches any kind of human's attention in their periphery. So,
right.
Grab their attention with a little something and kind of pull them in.
Got it. Any other tips, maybe not even necessarily the part of the booth that we see, but best practices that you've talked in the past, you use a very fancy term, docent, which I guess is what they talk about in museums. You use that term as somebody being a guide, walking somebody through a booth. What other, if we spent one more minute, what other truth bombs or insights would you drop for people?
I guess what I would like to leave people with is find a partner, an exhibit professional, exhibit company, an agency, somebody that knows the lay of the land. Listen, I can paint, but I'm going to hire a professional painter to paint my house. My dad was an electrician. He taught me a little bit about electricity. I'm not wiring anything. I'm hiring a professional. So when you get into the trade show realm, depending on the size of your event, do some small 10 by 10 pop-ups or whatever. That's a piece of cake. Go ahead and do that on your own. But you start getting into these bigger spaces with multiple players. We're talking about several different, GCs that are involved in plumbing and electrical, and there's so many hands that touch the project.
Right.
Like find somebody who knows the lay of the land, who has depth and has resources on site, because there will, again, I mentioned it earlier, you can build a plan and that plan will not go, as you envision. So
speaking of on site, you've been here now for a week. Today's opening day. You've been here for a week.
That's correct. And I arrived halfway through. The setup was already halfway over at that point. So this is a 2-week long setup. There's just so much that can go on, so much that can happen. You got to have people to kind of lean on who they know the city, they know the facility, they know the industry, right? So, I would say kind of, find that person. There are lots of great exhibit companies out there that are looking out for you as the exhibitor, and just kind of, have those honest conversations, find somebody that you trust and you can work with, and then lean into that relationship.
Fabulous. You don't happen to have your coin handy, do you?
I sure do.
All right. So Chris is a previous guest of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast, and so he received his podcast challenge coin. You can't buy them. You have to earn them as a guest or a very loyal listener of the podcast. So, Chris, thanks for your time today. Thanks for having joined me on the podcast in the past.
There we go. I want to get it right side up.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ed. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.